let's finish up about the chapter 2. This is part 4. And we ended talking about the different structures of the proteins. Here's a good picture of what they should kind of look like. The primary structure is a sequence of which amino acids goes where. Then as the amino acids goes into proper positions, the hydrogen bonds between different amino acids take place. So then you'll either have this alpha helical structure, which most of you guys have heard of a double helix, like in DNA. Alpha helix is just a single helical structure right here, right? The hydrogen bonding can also take place between two amino acid chain right here that are pretty far apart in terms of sequence, but due to the nature of their location, they can interact with each other because of spatially they're next to each other, right? And it helps form what we call a beta pleated sheet structure, almost like an accordion structure. These are localized folds in the actual longer chain. And then the very end, most proteins end with a tertiary structure where we have these big old folds. So then we have a functional binding site that is formed by folding this long chain of amino acids so then there's a proper configuration. Now, some proteins have a fourth structure called a quaternary structure, where you have several polypeptide chains that through ionic bonding or through hydrophilic interactions stabilize each other. So then these four amino acid chains or polypeptide chains help form one big unit right here. Now, in terms of proteins, in order to have all these different proteins, it needs to have that proper shape. And that shape is based on those four main types of structure. Now, when it has the proper structure, all four of them are complete and it is nice and ordered, then we have the different functions that they can impart. So all proteins have some kind of function. It can play a role structurally. Keratin, very tough kind of protein that gives you some protection that we find in hair, we find at the nails, right? And in the epidermal surface. Another one is probably the most common protein we have in our body, collagen. Collagen allows us to have a lot of strength and a lot of flexibility. It's found in the deeper layer of skin. It's found in our bones to give us a little bit of flexibility in our bones. So then if we fall, the bones flex a little bit without just shattering. We also find collagen in cartilage and teeth. Other functions include communication. Hormones are types of polypeptides or small proteins. We also see proteins allowing us to have cell signal recognition. Receptors to which signal proteins bind are also proteins. So proteins play a huge role in cell communication, whether the communication that is an actual hormone or the communication is through the receptor, which the hormone will bind to. What else does it do? Proteins can act as membrane transport, allowing glucose to enter the cells. So when you release insulin, insulin allows glucose receptors to be put into every single cell in our body. These glucose receptors are proteins that allow glucose to enter the cell from the bloodstream. That's an example of it. A lot of our enzymes that are there to help break down the nutrients we eat, right? Almost all of them are proteins, right? So when we hear of the enzyme lactase, lactase is a membrane protein. It's an enzyme as well, right? Other functions, recognition and protection. Like we mentioned just a little bit, the combination of glucose and proteins, we call glycoproteins, play a huge role for immune recognition. So then our cells recognize different cells that are part of our larger body, and it doesn't attack those cells. Antibodies are also proteins produced by our white blood cells to protect ourselves from foreign pathogens, including viruses, including bacteria. We also have proteins that are important for movement, right? They allow us to change either the shape of the cell or move something over the cell. Proteins also allow us to adhere to each other. So then the cell doesn't get ripped apart from its neighboring cells. Now, in terms of proteins as enzymes, enzymes are proteins that function to catalyze reactions. So, reactions that normally occur at body temperature, well, what happens is enzymes are going to be there. And again, enzymes are proteins. They're going to increase the speed at which the reaction occurs, right? The substrate is a substance which the enzyme acts upon. So when we have lactose intolerance, we're missing the enzyme lactase. Because of that, the substrate, lactose, is going to go through our GI tract, and as it goes through our GI tract, it goes right through into the large intestine where we have lots of bacterium ready to break it apart, produce a lot of methane. And because we have actual solute there, a sugar there that shouldn't be there, it also attracts water to that region. So then we have an osmotic diuresis. And when we have a lot of water going through the GI tract, that's going to lead to diarrhea. So that's not a good sign. Right. What other things do we see that are part of our macromolecules? ATP, nucleotides, and nucleic acids. Now, notice that they're all kind of found together, right? Why? Because nucleic acids are formed by adenosine triphosphate. That's the adenine that we see in A for the nucleic acid. Remember, there's four bases: adenine, thymine, all right, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, right? Well, the adenine comes from ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So ATP is a type of both energy that we use so then we can have chemical reactions occurring in our body. And it's also important for the basis for our DNA and RNA. It is one of the bases, right? So what we see with adenosine triphosphate is we have that adenine base that we see in DNA. We see ribose as a sugar, and instead of just one phosphate group, we have three phosphate groups. The more phosphate groups we have, the more energy we have, right? So this is, right, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. You have adenine that we saw with DNA, right? DNA also has the base, right? Adenine, and DNA is deoxyribose, though, right? The thing is, this triphosphate, right? Each one of these oxygen phosphate, oxygen phosphate bonds is really energetic. ATP is our body's own battery pack, right? Now, we will form it based on using energy from electrons that's released through metabolism. In the process of forming it, we form these high energy bonds right here. Now, we have that free radical. Now, we trapped it in a very safe battery pack. If all we had were just free radicals, it's very energetic, it's found throughout your cells, but it's also very dangerous. It can cause your DNA to start to kind of decompose if we don't have a way of trapping that energy in a much safer form. So when we break apart glucose and we produce a lot of free radicals and electrons, we want to we want to be able to store it in a way that is very safe so that when we do need the energy, right, we can rip it apart and we can actually have even a safe form of the leftovers as well. Right? So here's ATP right here, adenosine triphosphate. It's our battery pack, energy pack, right? ATP is the most important energy transfer molecule in the body. It stores energy gained from exergonic reactions or exergonic reactions. So reactions in our body that produces a lot of energy. When we release that energy, we're going to produce a lot of electrons. That electron is really highly energetic. Yeah, that's good, but it can also cause a lot of damage. So we want to store it in a way that is much more safe. So as soon as we get that energy that's released from these reactions, we're going to form ATP. And ATP is a very safe battery pack that we can now put away. And then when we need the energy, we just take it back out, plug it in, and it's very safe, right? Holds energy in covalent bonds. The oxygen and phosphate groups have high energy bonds. When we break it apart, it's going to fuel a lot of reactions, right? Other type of nucleotides include guanosine triphosphate, right, and cyclic AMP. Now, nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. There's DNA and RNA. DNA is usually found only in one area, right? And that's in our nucleus right here. It contains millions of nucleotides. It contains genes that codes for different proteins our body makes. So DNA, I would say, is like a big encyclopedia of all the different proteins that you will make and how much to make it and when to make it. That's what DNA is. It's a big encyclopedia and it's going to list, right, all the different proteins we make, when and how much to make them. RNA, we're going to see that RNA, there's not just one type. DNA, there's only one type, right? It's found only in the nucleus. That's it. It's going to store information. That's it. RNA is different, right? RNA is going to be the functional aspect. We have three types: messenger, ribosomal, and transfer RNA. They're much shorter. They're going to be single-stranded. These are the ones that carries out genetic instructions for how to make the protein. They also assemble amino acids in the right order so that we can make the protein correctly, right? We'll talk more about DNA and RNA in chapter 4, I believe, right? 3 and 4, right? So I'll stop right here and